Good morning, Chatterbox. Today is Tuesday, April 11th. All the boys are back in their normal positions at home. How's everyone doing this morning, Tom and Anthony?
Excellent.
Awesome, man.
It's a beautiful day outside.
It is a beautiful day. I got sun shining through my studio today. This is the first time in 23 episodes I've had a sun problem. I guess that tells you a little bit about where we reside.
Yeah, it's beautiful here in Pittsburgh. One of the best places in the world.
Some of us live in one state. Some of us are going to live in two states. I've heard just living in two states is better than one. So maybe we'll try splitting time in two ago.
Yeah, it's not even like you have a second home. It's like you have two first homes.
Exactly. It's better that way. 10-hour drive in between both homes. It's nothing.
Yeah,
I got to work on my tan now, so you get my tan going.
Yeah, you just stay right where you are. It looks like you'll get a tan on the left side of your head at least.
And he was showing me pictures yesterday. Looks like me and you have the Anthony and Tom suite upstairs when we go visit West Bend, Georgia.
That's awesome. Hey, as long as Steph doesn't give us any problems when we're all grinding down there, getting some work done.
I was told that the new house is not a frat house, so we'll have to.
Be careful with Anthony. Be careful with Anthony.
So Tom, whenever we get on to visit, we have to dress up in college uniform. All right. Both have a case of beer, have sunglasses ready to go.
Got it ready.
And just knock on the door. And as Steph answers, she's going to be like, what the heck is going on?
We'll actually bring that. What's that juice called that everybody's bringing? The Gorge or Jorg?
Yeah, that's a college thing. I think you have your gorge or something now.
Yeah.
I used to call it a gallon of apple cider with Jameson in it and I call it a tailgate, but now these kids have names for it. They name it. They have their mixture. Borg, yeah. Yeah, but you have to have a really punny name for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was good.
Well, I'm glad to see we're all back in our normal spots. Tom, you made it back into the U.S. I made it back for my trip to the Masters. Anthony's just been here.
I didn't go anywhere.
All you do is work, Why don't you take those jet skis out or those quads, go have some fun somewhere.
It's too soon for jet skis. The quads I had out not too long ago. So, yeah, I love that stuff, man.
All right, guys. Well, last week, getting in, now that we're into April, we got all these closings coming up. Closing starts changing, closing dates change, sellers' dates change, buyers' dates change, and we got a lot of calls about, hey, we need to change this closing date. And the one thing that's forgotten about is that interest rate lock. Where's the lock? Do we have to extend? Is there a cost to extend? So with the market moving the way that it is, if you're an agent, if you're moving closing different than what it was from the original date, you have to check with the lender and the loan officer to see what's going on with that rate lock. I know myself, I try to lock in a loan, because it's cheaper the less time you lock it in. So if I can get a loan locked in to get to closing and it's a 30-day lock instead of a 45-day lock, I'm going to do that to try to get my client, a better rate. So we might not have a lot of time to extend. Tom, whenever you have to extend, have you seen agents being proactive? Have you seen that's something that's forgot about? What do you see out there in your side of things?
Definitely something that's forgot about. They come to us last and say, hey, we got to push this closing back. Here's the new CTA. It's 3 weeks later. I didn't even know about it. And I get this CTA and then I'm scrambling trying to figure out who's going to pay, what the cost is going to be. When we're extending these dates, we always got to make sure that we are letting the lender know and we can extend that date forward for them and see what cost and who we're going to charge the cost to. I need to plug in my computer. We're going to have another incident.
All right. Well, while you do that, we'll let Anthony talk. Anth, let's fill the people in a little bit. All right. So we got an accepted offer. You talk to the buyer. We're setting up mortgage application. One of the first things we do is talk about the rate. the buyer has the option to lock in their interest rate or float their interest rate. Why don't you go over that process a little bit and how we talk to the buyer about their interest rate?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, it's essentially, as soon as we've had agreement of sale, there's a few key points on that agreement that we're looking at. The closing date being, very important to the transaction, because we're basing everything on that deal closing that specific day. So when we're reviewing rates with the client, to lock in, unless they want to float it, which is basically letting the interest rate ride per day in the hopes that it's going to get better than it currently is. Usually it doesn't always work out. Usually it ends up being, worse when it's time to lock in. But once we lock it in, we're locking it in for a specific time based on that closing date. So, typical timeframes are 38, 53 days, and 75 days is typical lock-in timeframes. The interest rate is going to be adjusted the longer that interest rate is locked for, because that money is guaranteed for a longer period of time. So, if we have a 45-day or a 38-day closing, then that interest rate is going to be cheaper than a 68-day closing, because it's a shorter period of time. But when we lock it in, it's locked in based on that specific closing date. So if that closing date is pushed a week ahead, then we have to extend that rate, which is a cost to the buyer. And it's a per day cost. So it depends on how many days we have to extend that lock for. We can't just arbitrarily unlock and then relock for a new time frame.
And that's what, and I get it. Not everyone understands the ins and outs of the lock process. Why would you? But that's where I think a lot of folks are like, well, why can't I'll just let mine expire and then lock back in? It doesn't work that way. There's a time period you have to wait with investors, and you can't just let a rate expire and then you're back to where today's rates are. It can get very complicated, and it is a per cost. It is a per day cost, and it's based off of everyone's individual loan amount. So just to give everyone an idea, if you have a $100,000 loan, it's going to cost roughly about $20 a day to extend that rate. If you have a $200,000 loan, it's going to be about $40 a day. $300,000 loan, about $60 a day. I think you can get the trend there. For every 100,000, it's about a $20 difference. But that's per day. If you're talking about a week, and now you're adding $400, $500, $600, $700 to someone's fees, well, who's paying for that? Because that is an actual cost. The lender can't always pick that up. We can do everything we possibly can to help out, but someone's got to pay for that. And I try to look at it as who's delaying closing. If this is a seller saying that they're delaying closing, I'm fighting for the buyer saying, well, go back and tell that seller it's going to cost, $500 to extend the rate. As long as they're willing to pick that up, that's not going to affect the buyer at all. But there is an absolute cost if you're going to extend an interest rate. Now, sometimes it just works out where we have 15 extra days. We locked it. The longer rate was fine, and we have some wiggle room. So that's why you have to talk to the lender, because it may not be a problem. But that rate also may be expiring a day after closing, and we have a big problem.
Yeah, definitely avoids issues if we know it up front. But you know what? Good point, though. On the closing date, the odd days interest is always forgotten about as well. So that's based on, the closing date as well. So if a client closes, if we have them closing on the 2nd, or let's just say like the 24th of the month, but now that closing date's moved up to the 10th. Now we have to redisclose, because now the client has more cost for interest from the day they close up until the end of the month. So, that's another thing along with the interest rate that's very important with closing date.
Yeah. And with all that being said too, we have to verify that they have the funds in their account as well. That's just not something that we could say, oh, it's 500 extra, come from wherever. We may need updated bank statements again to show more funds in their account to cover the closing costs. So it could cause problems down the line. Definitely easier just to talk to us ahead of time and see where the rate's at and what to do.
And in situations like this, if things change in the process and something bad happens or costs increase, and we have a buyer that gets declined last minute, that's why that happens, because something changed. Now we needed to show more money. Maybe the buyer doesn't have the funds, or we need to show reserves on top of the funds they have, because sometimes that's a thing that a lot of people don't realize it. In some loan types, we're having to show reserves, and now they don't qualify for that extra cost. So again, we want to work with everyone as much as possible to make the deal close without, any headaches or any extra costs. But sometimes there is no other way around other than extending the rate and having a cost for that interest rate.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, boys, that's all I got going into this Tuesday. I know everyone's running around busy. The first-time home buyer seminars are continuing to be spread out there. Open houses are going crazy. Pre-approvals are rocking and rolling. So I hope you guys don't pull your hair out, Anthony. And have a great Tuesday.
Can't wait to go get my breakfast from Mr. Saxon here. I'm pretty hungry.
Oh, enjoy your cranberry fun.
I will. You guys have a good day. See y'all
All right,
Friday.
guys. See ya.